For the multi-series bar graph example, we're going to go back to the averages that we calculated in practice set 2. And our instructions specify to create the bar graph for the first 2 minutes of exercise for each pedal rate. So I'm going to highlight my data labels for my pedal rates all the way up to 2 minutes. So I've also included my time labels as well. When you include the labels, Excel should automatically label your x-axis with your time points and your y-axis with the heart rate measures that are calculated in here. And then the pedal rates would go into series. If you don't highlight, and I'll do it this way, that way you have an example of it. If you forget to highlight your data labels, it's okay. So let's say we inserted a bar graph. What would happen is you would see something, I'm going to stick this here, you'll see something that looks like this where it says series 1, 2, and 3, and then your bottom labels down here are labeled 1 through 7. If we wanted to change this, all we have to do is right-click on the graph and go to Select Data. Under the Series section, we could either rename the series by selecting the appropriate pedal rate, or we can just type it in as low PR, normal PR, and high PR. Okay, so again, this is if you forgot, and then they change. This is if you forget to highlight your data labels. Okay, the same thing could go for our x-axis labels, so we could right-click, select data, and then the horizontal axis labels would be the time points from 0 to 2 minutes. And then you can see the times change. Okay. I recommend, though, doing all of your data labels as well as the data. That way you can go to Insert, Bar Graph, and then you automatically have both your legend filled out as well as your time series. We can edit our chart title to reflect what is in our graph. So this is maybe not type out average all the way. This is the average percent heart rate max during a graded exercise test for various pedal rates. I can then add my primary horizontal and vertical axes labels. My vertical axis is going to represent the percent heart rate max. You can put percent as a unit, but it doesn't, I feel like it's kind of implied when you say percent heart rate max, so that one I would let slide if you didn't have a unit. On the bottom here, this is our time in minutes. And then something else that we would add to this, or that we typically would add when we're plotting averages, are error bars, which are representative of the standard deviation. Now, we haven't gotten into measures of variability yet, but standard deviations are typically presented as plus and minus, and then a certain value. So basically what that means is that our data ranged both some standard deviation unit above and below the mean. The way we add those in is we go to Add Chart Elements, Error Bars, and then you honestly can pick any one of these options. I'm just going to click Standard Deviation. Please note that this is not actually formatted to the standard deviation though. So double click on the error bars for the low pedal rate. And then what we're going to do is set them to a custom value. The positive error values are going to be representative of the standard deviations that were calculated from 0 to 2 minutes. So that's the variation above the mean. The negative error value would be the variation below the mean, and that standard deviation value is going to be the same for both the positive and negative values. Then we see our error bars adjust appropriately. And then we can do the same procedure for the normal pedal rate. And the same procedure for the high pedal rate. I noticed my unit shifted down, or I added units up here. So I'm going to adjust my y-axis values by double-clicking on the axis and then changing my maximum to 100. I personally don't think it's always necessary to have a bunch of decimal places, so if I kind of collapse this axis options and go to numbers, I'm going to change the decimal places reported to 0. The other thing that might be helpful for you guys when you're making graphs that look like this, we can change how this is organized as well. So if I go to, or I can either go to select data in the chart design tab or right click and choose select data. If I clicked on switch row or column, what that does is instead of my pedal rates being my series, my time points are now listed as my series. So if I click OK, then we would have the low pedal rate, the normal pedal rate, and the high pedal rate being the types of pedal rates. So this label would have to change if we decided to organize this graph this way. And then each of these different bars would represent a different time point. I think I like it better this way. I think it looks a little cleaner, but that is an option. Let's say if you create a table and if you highlight all of your data to stick it into the graph, it doesn't go in the way you want it to, you can always do switch row column and then it will flip your data so that it's organized a different way. All right, so that's how we make a multi-series bar graph with error bars.